welcome to episode 2 of the Farm.One podcast. My name is Aina Tubaleha, and today I am joined by Rob Lang, our CEO and founder.
Hello.
Michael Chin is joining us
Hello.
virtually, and today we have a special guest with us, Justin Randolph, our operations director.
Hello.
Each episode is going to have a couple of different segments, and we're going to start the first segment of showing you all what's in this week's bag of our farm share. So we actually have a bag with us right here. So all of our farm share deliveries are delivered in these reusable bags.
Show the logo. Yeah. Okay. All right.
And since Justin is here with us, we're actually going to walk through each box. So each delivery comes with 3 boxes. The first one that you'll see is our herbs and edible flowers box. I wish you could smell this. Oh my goodness, look at that.
It smells really good.
Yeah. Let's go. Oh, wow. It looks so good.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Justin, can you walk us through what's in the herbs and edible flowers box for this week?
Yeah, sure. So you can see a lot of the flower colors that pop out immediately. The flowers that we have in here are marigolds, Durango marigolds, which are a larger edible flower. Really great for kind of confetti petals and garnishes and that sort of thing. We have some dianthus flowers and some assorted violas as well, all of which are edible. Now for the herb part that we have this week we're featuring a few different kinds of basil, actually. So it's a little basil sampler. So starting off at the top here, we have a very traditional style Genovese basil, an Italian basil. Really great for pestos, really beautiful, pillowy, fluffy, classic basil flavor and look to it there. Yeah, try it out.
What else we got?
So next to that, we have another basil variety that is really interesting. It's a little bit more unique. Grows a little bit more differently, and it looks a little bit different as well. This is called a Pluto basil. Maybe if you want to pop one out there so folks can see. It's a little bit more compact, smaller leaves, kind of more of a bush style basil, if you will. But it's incredibly aromatic. It really just kind of pops out of the container right when you open the.
It's my favorite.
Yeah, this is gorgeous. It's just like the whole room here smells like Pluto basil now. A little bit more spicy, a little bit more kind of like there's a little kind of like cinnamon, nutmeg, and clove, and that sort of like warm spice in there.
That's really strong.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that so much. It's great.
A little bit goes a long way.
Mm-hmm.
And now for the third basil down below here, we have something a little bit more off the beaten path. This is a cinnamon basil. So as far as the leaves go, a broader leaf basil, you can kind of see there. Kind of, it almost looks like a Thai basil, but it has a little bit more of almost more like a fruity aromatic to me. Of course, it has that kind of like cinnamon sort of backbone. This is really great for making syrups, doing it in cocktails or teas or that sort of thing.
Yeah, and it's got this like serrated edge as well, hasn't it? So you can kind of tell it. You wouldn't spot it if you hadn't been around this plant that much, but you can spot it if you had a bit of experience. Yeah. So good.
And then one more herb that we have here for you in the center here, we have a little bit of summer savory. So this is kind of the late summer savory here. Savory, if you've never had the opportunity to experience it, I like to tell people it tastes a little bit like oregano. It has that more kind of oregano-y sort of thyme, sort of scrubby or herb flavor. It's a little bit more succulent.
Yeah.
It's not quite as kind of rough in texture as like a thyme. But I love summer savory with like sautéed with beans, like a bean stew, or doing it in breads is really beautiful as well.
Oh yeah, that's so nice.
Ooh, a nice focaccia.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, definitely.
Any focaccia. Yeah. Amazing. All right.
That's our box.
So that's in the herbs and flowers box. That's the blue box, and every bag has red, yellow, and blue. Blue is always the herbs and flowers, and that'll adjust depending on what's on the farm. So if you look behind us, you'll see stuff that might appear in another box. So that's blue.
The next box that we're going to walk you through is our red box, which has the microgreens.
Oh, it's so pretty.
Oh, look at that.
Yeah. Make sure you don't tip it on the floor.
So what do we have in the microgreens this week, Justin?
Okay, so the microgreens this week, we have a few different kinds of mustards and maizunas. So the green, we'll start off with the green color here. The green color is something that's really interesting. This is a green wave mustard. Now we've grown green wave mustard as like a larger leaf mustard, a full leaf, and it's a really spicy variety of mustard. The microgreen is not quite as spicy as the really intense mature leaves, but it has a nice little kind of like quick little pop when you eat it. Really beautiful.
It gives me like a flavor of wasabi a little bit, a very small hint of wasabi.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's that horseradish. The thing to note, by the way, about the stuff that we're showing you right now, this is a little bit younger than what's going to go out on like Wednesday and Friday, just because it's a couple of days before that harvest. So what you're seeing here, you're going to get bigger leaves, right?
Yep.
And you're also going to get like a more characteristic, like jagged shape from the Mizuna, and the mustard as well will have more of a leaf shape.
So then, let's see here. We have a Mizuna here. This is a red streak Mizuna. Really kind of beautiful shape to the true leaf, which you'll see in the box. Not quite as spicy as the green wave, but it still has a nice kind of little kick to it as well.
Right.
And then deep red leaves, which I really love the color of. We have Ms. America Mizuna, very similar to the red streak, but a kind of deeper color gives it that nice kind of garnet pop.
You know, the Ms. America ones almost taste like potato skins to me.
I like that.
It has like that nice peppery taste to it.
Yeah, I get that.
Cool. Okay, so that's the red box. That's the microgreens. And then in your yellow box every week, you're going to get baby greens. So let's have a look at what's in this week. Ta-da.
So the baby greens, you can see the leaves are a little bit larger, really great for your kind of like classic salad mix. So we have a few different things in this. We have a mixture of lettuces. This is called a 5-star lettuce. It's a real nice and tender, soft, just really pleasing style lettuce. Great texture on it. Next, we have a mixture of kales, actually. We have an Italian kale, Toscano, really classic Italian kale. Nice kind of bluish gray sort of leaves to it. A little bit more substantial texture. We have a little bit of red Russian kale.
Which is not red.
It's not red, no. It's red Russian. We actually have red kale in the mix as well, which is that kind of maroon red.
That's good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Awesome. Thanks for walking us through that, Justin. I'm really excited for all of our FarmShare customers to experience some of these flavors that we just tried. And all of our deliveries will be going out by bike. And the reusable containers have been actually really easy and simple for all of our customers to exchange for every delivery. It's one of the ways that Farm.One is really excited about reducing waste, and specifically plastic waste when it comes to some of these greens.
Definitely.
Awesome.
Yeah. So, what's next, Dinah?
The next segment that we're going to go into is news, where we're going to share, in this segment, we're going to be sharing a little bit of updates about Farm.One, as well as some vertical farming and industry news that we are really excited about or that we find interesting. Michael, do you want to start us off with some of the industry updates that you have?
Yeah, let's do that. So the first story that I want to talk about and get everyone's input on and their take actually came out at the end of last month in the Financial Times, the FT. They published a story that was titled "Vertical Farming: Hope or Hype." It feels like with every industry, that's out there, that's coming up, and there's a ton of hype around it. The natural news cycle tends to be, within a few years of some success and some notoriety. There's always the counter story. This is hype. This is all going to go away. So this was an interesting story and felt kind of timely. And even though it came out a little over a week ago, I figured, since we skipped last week's podcast, this is a pretty important story in our industry, right? So the premise of the story, and we touched on this a little bit last week when we talked about Driscoll's investment in Plenty, is you've got on the one hand all of this investment that's going in, and they're citing, of course, almost $2 billion in investment in vertical farming and ag tech since 2014. On the one hand, you've got all of that, and entrepreneurs and investors are talking about the promise of efficiency, of how environmentally friendly and all of this stuff is. And then on the other hand, you've got I wouldn't say they're naysayers, maybe they're realists in some respects, where they're starting to talk about, well, productivity isn't really what a lot of entrepreneurs and vertical farms are quite talking about. It's going to take a while. It's still really expensive. There's still a lot of capital that needs to go in. It's not the cure-all, right? So here's the question. Is there hope in this? Is this going to change the food system? Are we all going to be looking at people like Justin in the future as the titans of industry? Or is it just hype, right? Is it going to go the way of, the usual sort of Betamax and other things that we point to in the industry? What do you guys think?
Well, Betamax was a superior technology, by the way. So, but I mean, I think my opinion in some extent. I think it's going to take quite a bit of time for a lot of these companies to get to profitability, and some investors are going to have the patience for that. Some companies are just going to die on the way. Building vertical farms at a large scale is a really expensive proposition, and it really seems like none of these bigger companies are anywhere close to profitability yet. I think that, and as mentioned in the article, and it's a good article to read, I think, as mentioned in the article, I think one of the worries is that there are just too many outlandish claims from the vertical farming industry. Like, companies tend to say, like, oh, we're completely clean, we have no emissions, we have completely local food, all this kind of stuff. And I think a lot of companies are just pushing it a bit too far with the PR, and it would be better as an industry if we just get more realistic about what's going on. So, the power that we use is quite significant. The expense and the labor involved in running these farms is pretty significant. And so, it'd be better for us to just become more realistic. I know that's a bit difficult when companies are trying to raise money, they're trying to get investors excited. But in the long term, being realistic and straightforward about the shortcomings of your company and the difficulties, that's going to be a more promising thing. And I think we've got to do that as an industry so that, customers and investors don't just after a while, say, hey, you guys are all full of shit, So that's my take on it. I don't know. I mean, Justin, what do you think? As someone who actually lives and works on a vertical farm every day, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree with you, Rob, in that there is a lot that we can do to improve the way we operate here. There's a lot of, it's still pretty expensive to build a farm. We can find more efficiencies, but that's kind of what we're focusing on. I don't come into work every day trying to disrupt the entire, world's food supply and farming and that sort of thing. So, I think we're making a lot of gains here at Farm.One, kind of piece by piece, and we're going to just keep focusing on that, making our operation more efficient, more consistent, and putting out a better product and better yields.
I think there's
oh, go ahead, Michael. Sorry.
No, sorry. Go on.
I don't think that the future of farming and agriculture is going to be vertical farming only. I think that there's going to be success in certain use cases for vertical farming, but the future of food is not going to be just this industry. And so I think that it's really important for this industry to find out where there is opportunity for them to solve some serious problems in the food space.
Yeah, I could totally agree. And like, I think one of the things is a lot of these companies right now don't want to say no. So someone will come to them and they'll say, "Hey, could we grow wheat or could we grow, jackfruit or something, right?" And some of these companies are sort of they're toying with investors and people and saying like, "Yeah, we could do that in a few years' time, or we could do blueberries, or we could do this." And it's like, actually, like, let's look realistically at what we would be able to grow in 10 years. It's not those things. It's going to be leafy greens. It's going to be some fruit, probably strawberries. I don't know if you've got other ideas about what might be viable, but like, it's not wheat. It's not soy. It's not corn. It's not these big sort of difficult things.
It's not going to be commodity crops. We could do peppers. We could start to do like small fruits and that sort of thing. I think pretty easily, but it's not top of our list to do big commodity crops.
Yeah.
So to Ina's point, what does I guess the future of farming look like then, right? So right now, something like 50% of the organics in the U.S. come out of California. We've seen over this summer some of the problems that we're facing and the environmental impacts of climate change. They're running into water issues from the Colorado River drying up. What happens there? When we think of the entire picture of what we do as an indoor vertical farm, but then, there's the greenhouse aspect of controlled environment agriculture. And then of course, there's still field farming that's happening. Let's say in the near term, over the next 5 years or so, how does that begin to shape up, do you think?
Well, I think vertical farming is definitely part of the answer to that. But I think you're going to start to see folks come up with all sorts of solutions, especially, in places like California and throughout the West and Midwest, where you have a lot of families that have been into farming for a long time and being, kind of forced to change the way that they do things, especially the younger generations. So for some of them, it's going to be getting into vertical farming. Some of them, it's going to be using other sort of, methods to produce crops, produce the crops that they've been producing for a long time. So I think it's part of that.
Yeah, I think that, people often forget that agriculture as a whole has so many different types of agriculture going on. You've got orchards, you've got animal husbandry, you've got leafy greens, you've got my parents used to grow olives, right? Completely different kind of farming. And so this technology is suitable, for a particular subset of crops and also a particular subset of situations. I think what is sort of really interesting and just doesn't get talked about that much is it is viable with vertical farming for a farmer who may be growing just one or two crops outdoors to build a small vertical farming facility that can then serve their local community in a way that they just haven't been able to previously. So if you look at someone growing, let's say corn, in the Midwest, it just wouldn't really be viable for them to try to grow like a spinach or a leafy green otherwise. But to have like a small greenhouse or a small vertical farming structure that could, help them serve their local community with some fresh produce is actually something that's pretty viable. And it's getting cheaper and cheaper. And I think that's the cool thing. And it's getting to be a technology which is accessible as well. And what we're hoping to do, I think, in addition to other companies, is just reduce that barrier to entry so that more and more people can do this stuff easily. I don't know if you agree with that, but like that's my sort of take on it.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I mean, the barrier to entry is kind of one of the big roadblocks right now, and that's one of the big things that we're tackling. So
yeah.
Yeah, and it's cost of the equipment and also the capital requirements, but also there's a knowledge base, right? There's talent, and I think that's one of the things I'm particularly interested in when we get into the discussion about Justin and what he does later. How do you develop and cultivate that talent? How does that happen? At scale. I'm also keen to hear Ina as a tour guide, as somebody who started in this business and at Farm.One, getting people excited and interested about this. Curious sort of your take in terms of how we think about awareness and in the industry, job training and all of that too.
What was the other news story that you found in the past week, Michael?
Yeah, so kind of along these lines, right? This theme of we're at a bit of an inflection point in the industry, or at least it feels like it, right? So there's a story this week that Eataly, our good friends over there in the Flatiron, sort of premium grocery, or I guess you'd call them marketplace, signed a pretty big deal with Mercato, which is an e-commerce platform, to do same-day deliveries off of their platform. This kind of got really interesting for me when I coupled it with a story that came out of a research firm, an analyst firm in the UK called IGD, where they profiled what they're calling Generation P. At some stage, we got to run out of letters, but they call them the perennial shoppers. So they're people aged 50 to 64. They're looking at them as a $1.5 trillion grocery market. But it sort of made me kind of think about the way we're changing habits. Coming into COVID, it almost felt like everything about the world was really different. And now it's so much has changed, right? I mean, we've looked at the supply chain, we've had conversations about the supply chain and the food system, and now we're looking at changing buying patterns, how retailers and brands and suppliers need to think about things. Look at what we're doing, right? We're now selling direct to consumers. It's very high touch, very sort of close connection to the brand. Curious kind of how you guys, where vertical farming's place in all of this, and suppliers like us that are in neighborhoods and in communities. How should we be thinking about this?
Well, I think it's interesting when you think about Eataly, right? Because previously a brand like that has used retail to, create its distribution channel and meet consumers, right? So spending a lot of money on prime locations in Flatiron here, downtown, very, very, very expensive real estate in order to get their brand across and also just actually meet the customer. Whereas what they're saying, or what they're sort of admitting now with COVID is, a significant amount of volume is going to be delivery. I can't actually get directly to my customer. I'm not capable of building up a delivery network or an online store experience and attract enough people. So I'm going to work with a partner like Mercato. Mercato being, I would, personally in my experience, not the greatest user experience. I don't know that many people who are like passionate Mercato shoppers. No, so maybe not the premier partner in that regard, but maybe a partner that's better for them to work with than say Amazon, where they might just lose all chance of kind of brand recognition, etc. So I think that if you look at that, that's kind of the way that Eataly is going, and I hope that it's successful, but it does sort of look a little bit like capitulation to me. But I think in terms of like how that might fit in with us and producers and vertical farmers, I think one of the big questions about being any kind of producer is, am I a commodity producer, or am I creating a brand that customers recognize and I can leverage for higher margins, higher value? And of course, creating a brand is difficult. It costs a lot of money. It requires expertise. It's not always successful, and you don't always get that price premium that you expect. But I think that some vertical farms are definitely trying to go that right. They're trying to create brands that are recognizable. If you look at, for instance, Bowery, their brand name is all over that product. I don't know how much recognition they really have among customers. I don't know how many customers really in the grocery store are comparing salad brands. Most of the time when I go to the grocery store, if I see salad, I go like, oh, I don't like that one. I don't like that one. I don't like that one, because the quality is generally not that great. But maybe it's possible. And I think that if you look, long term, you would expect that a lot of produce producers want to at least differentiate in the grocery store, because at the moment they can't. If you buy broccoli at Whole Foods, it's very unlikely that you're going to recognize the brand that's from, which of course means the grower is getting a lower price point because they're basically a replaceable commodity. And so I think that, you will see more farmers at least entering new farmers going like, okay, I better create a brand for myself, otherwise I'm going to be commoditized. I think historically for farmers who've been growing for ages, that isn't necessarily an option. It's, not necessarily going to be something that they can achieve if they're outside of a city, for instance. And so it's a tricky kind of landscape. But, certainly the approach that we've taken, of course, is to try to create a brand and to try to create sort of local connection. But I think, my last point to that would be, one of the problems with our food chain, right, is that the produce that we buy as consumers, sometimes we just don't know where it comes from, or it comes from a long way away. It comes from like not a real person. So we don't care how it was produced, if it was using pesticides, et cetera, et cetera. And so along with that need to create a brand, I think is this opportunity to create a local connection. And that's why, personally, I like the urban farming approach, because you can have a farm that is like literally very, very close to its customers. And so that concept of like what a brand is becomes, much more human. It's like, okay, it's not really a brand. It's Justin around the corner who I know is like a nice guy, and, he does it this way. So anyway, that was a long stream of opinion, Michael, but, I don't know if you guys want to chime in on that.
Yeah, just, thinking about delivery and same day delivery from the customer's perspective, I think probably most people, when they think about ordering groceries and produce and that sort of thing online, they're usually kind of, the first thing that pops into mind is the stores that they already shop at, or some of these bigger names. So I don't think that right now vertical farming pops into folks' minds. But as kind of Rob was getting at, with the bigger companies and the bigger retailers, you're not really getting the same sort of product. So I think there's a really big opportunity right now for vertical farmers, for urban farmers to kind of step in and play that role of the company that produces greens and herbs and flowers and that sort of thing in a very local setting, and delivers by bike, that sort of thing.
Did Eataly have a delivery model prior to this, or were they only retail?
I've definitely ordered from Eataly, but I think it was through Instacart.
I see.
Maybe. Yeah.
Because this change actually makes me more inclined to want to shop at Eataly, because I love the ingredients. I love the specialty products that they have.
I love the focaccia.
I love the focaccia. But the retail space was always really overwhelming for me, because it was such in high traffic places. I remember feeling there was just so many tourists, and I was overwhelmed by the amount of volume of people versus being able to focus on the ingredient experience. So I think that this kind of thing makes me more excited about shopping from Eataly.
I mean, this is the real test, right? Like, if you put great ingredients behind a delivery service, then you're really saying, I have great ingredients. Like, that's why I'm going to be chosen, and you take away that beautiful store experience, you take away the wine bar and like all this stuff, you're left with like, is this pasta sauce actually any better than what I'm going to get on Amazon? That's the test. Yeah.
Well, we'll find out.
All right.
Well, that's the news of this week.
Okay.
Thanks, Michael. So the next segment that we're going to go into is an interview with Justin Randolph.
When do we get to the Prosecco segment?
Right now.
Make the interview a lot more interesting.
Well, when I first started as a tour guide, every time I would come back into the farm, it was, 5, 6 p.m., right as the harvest shift was winding down. And there was one day that Justin had actually taught me how to open up a Prosecco bottle without making a sound.
But why are we opening Prosecco right now, guys? We have to talk about that.
We're celebrating the win of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris.
I mean, for a broader audience, we're celebrating democracy in action, right?
Yes.
And the greatest voter turnout in U.S. history.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but very much that Biden defeated Trump as well. So,
and it's also a really good day to be a female.
Mm-hmm.
I feel really excited that there's a woman of color that is in office.
Amazing.
Do you want to show us, Justin?
Okay. Tell us why, but you got to tell us why you know how to deal with wine in general, right?
Okay. So I'll do that. I should say, though, the first trick to opening a bottle of Prosecco or Champagne or any sort of sparkling wine without making a sound is it has to be really cold. Oh. This is a little.
It's been sitting on the floor for a little bit.
A little bit more than cold, but we'll see how we do.
I always thought the first trick was to shake it.
So while I open this, I'll tell you. But you always want to keep your thumb on the cork through the whole process. going to take the foil off real quick. Before coming to Farm.One, I worked for many years in the New York City restaurant scene. Kind of started off a long time ago at Tribeca Grill, which is right around the corner here in Tribeca on Franklin and Greenwich, and as a server. And it's very well known for, this is going to be a long story, so you guys are waiting for a long time for this. No, I'll do this quickly. So Tribeca Grill is very well known for their wine list, one of the largest wine cellars in the world. And I started studying there and started studying at the wine at the American Sommelier Association, Court of Master Sommeliers, and kind of worked my way up to assistant sommelier, then left that restaurant group and joined a couple other restaurant groups, eventually Quality Branded, which is a large group here in New York City, as sommelier and then wine director at several locations. So kind of come from a restaurant culinary sort of background. So
you should be able to do this.
Should be able to do this, yeah. We've got great microphones here, so
But
let's see how we do.
also, what's the trick with Prosecco versus, how many twists is the Prosecco versus?
Oh,
the
it's
Champagne?
6. So some producers use cages that have more than 6 twists, but the traditional cage has 6 twists. So
Wait, how did that happen?
What?
There you go.
Okay.
Did you hear that?
Wait, it's done?
It's
Yeah.
It's like an Olympic diver diving into the pool and making no splash.
No splash.
Man,
Amazing.
it's like getting a flu shot. I'm like all excited and then it's over.
So cheers to Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. Amazing.
Thank you.
Are we going to garnish this with something fancy from our
Yeah.
box? It's just behind you, actually. Oh, thanks, Justin. This is the same Prosecco that we serve on our farm tours whenever they resume. We've had, obviously, a bunch of inquiries, people who want to come and visit the farm. Right now, we're just not able to do that because we can't really have visitors due to COVID. We definitely want to resume that whenever we can. It may actually be in a slightly different space. It may be in a different format. We're trying to figure that out. Oh, thank you. Little dianthus in there. Oh no, we've got a viola. Amazing.
Viola, yeah,
Very
Oh,
pretty.
that's beautiful.
Okay.
gorgeous.
I mean, this is obviously the simplest garnish you could possibly do. But one of the things you can do with your herbs and flowers in the box is to garnish a little cocktail. You don't need to do, I mean, the point is, I think you don't need to do anything like ridiculously fancy with this produce. You can literally make yourself a little vodka and tonic and put some lemon basil in there. You can put it in a non-alcoholic drink as well. Cheers.
Cheers.
Would you like some?
I'm okay.
You're good, right? So yeah, cheers. On to the next segment.
So, Justin, we actually wanted to dive a little bit deeper into your background and how you ended up here at Farm.One and, where the interest in vertical farming came from and how that started. Can
Cool.
you share a little bit about that story?
Yeah. Well, so I talked a little bit about my restaurant background, but really what got me into plants was my parents. Growing up, my parents always had a garden. Now they live in Jefferson City, Missouri, and they practice something called hugelkultur. And if you're not familiar with hugelkultur, it's basically, if you've ever seen like a raised bed outdoor, farming, it's kind of like raised bed gardening on steroids, where you'll have these really large kind of raised beds. A lot of times you put big logs, branches, leaves, all sorts of things. And you basically develop the soil in these big kind of ultra large raised beds. But growing up, my parents always had a garden. We grew up in the South, in Virginia and Georgia and Texas, and we always, gardened organically. And I think I was probably late high school, early into college, when I started to like it. Kind of early on when I was a kid, it was a part of the chores. Like you always had to go out and work in the garden, do something, build a raised bed or like do something like that. So it was always like, I hate this garden thing. But then, you start to get to where you enjoy it. And then kind of late in high school, early college days, I started cooking a lot. So I would come home, especially, coming home from college during the summer, going out in the garden and just, picking things when they're really super fresh, sauteing them up just really simply. and it really kind of solidified in kind of my blood that I really love gardening. So fast forward many years, I ended up going to school here at Queens College in New York City, studying music. But eventually I found an apartment with a backyard, and I was able to build this kind of really large, elaborate garden that kind of became an obsession. So every year it becomes more and more tomato plants. I think I got up to about 60 tomato plants this year, something like 24 or so pepper plants, just all sorts of things. A lot of the things you see here at Farm.One, I grow in my backyard. I've actually got some, this Ram was actually cloned from my backyard. So,
Oh, was it? But
Yeah.
wasn't that cloned from the farm?
this
in
was,
the first
yeah,
place?
it was cloned from the farm.
Right.
It left the farm, and
Yeah.
then it's back from my backyard.
How's your water
So-
bill this year, Justin?
Oh, so yeah, so I'll tell this story. I have a really fantastic landlord. He's kind of become a celebrity landlord these days. But I've been living in this apartment for about 14 years now, and the garden has grown and grown and grown and grown. And for the most part, my landlord was pretty into it. He supported me and my wife doing it, and until this year. This year, he was knocking on our back door, not very very happy, and he had the water bill for the building, and it had gone up, I think, about $800 in a month. So it kind of put the kibosh on a lot of the gardening that we were doing this year, which was a little unfortunate. We kind of scaled it back a little bit to something that was more manageable with rainwater. But we stopped watering it. I have a feeling though, I wasn't the only one who got a Con Ed bill during COVID that was greatly inflated because they couldn't go out and read the meters during COVID.
Yeah.
So everyone got like $300-400 electrical bills.
Mhm.
I kind of have a feeling that the same sort of thing happened with the water and the sewer bill. But I didn't want to argue it too much. He was very
Right.
kind and didn't charge us for that that exorbitant bill. So we just kind of made do with what we had, and we had a great harvest this year. And it's still going with a few tomatoes, but
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What
The-
did you do with all those tomatoes?
Well, we do a few things. The number one thing we do is eat them fresh. We eat quite a lot of tomato salad and just tomatoes tossed with basil and olive oil and salt and that sort of thing. And we do sauces. Saucing, just pureeing tomatoes. Sometimes we'll do it with a little bit of garlic, with a little bit of oregano, not too much flavors because we don't know what we're going to use it for in the future. But we freeze it, all that sauce. And then late summer, early autumn tomatoes, they'll start to turn color on the vine, but they won't fully ripen. So they're really great for quick pickles. So I've got a ton of tomatoes out there right now that I'm gonna quick pickle, and they're nice and kind of vibrant and fresh, and it's a good way to just kind of like capture that last bit of the season.
Maybe that should be like a super premium add-on to the subscription. Is Justin's pickled tomatoes?
Yeah, it'd have to be quite a price for me to part with it.
Yeah,
but-
hundreds of dollars.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Thanks for sharing, Justin.
Yeah.
Michael, do you have any other questions for Justin?
Yeah, I actually have a ton. So you had an interest in gardening, you had an interest in growing things and cooking them. So how did you find Farm.One? Like how did you end up sort of on the farm?
Yeah. So, I was working in restaurants for a very long time and kind of really loving it and working with a restaurant called Park Avenue Seasons, which is now on 26th and Park. It used to be on the Upper East Side on 63rd and Park Avenue. But it's a restaurant that basically reinvents itself 4 times a year. So every season it opens as a completely new restaurant, new menu, new furniture, new decorations. I mean, like the hand soaps in the bathroom change. So it's quite an undertaking. In addition to that, kind of had this kind of like grueling schedule of constantly turning over restaurants. In addition to that, we opened another restaurant for a brief period of time called General Assembly in the old Hurricane Club spot on 26 and Park Avenue. We flipped a nightclub and did a few other things. The schedule was a little bit less than ideal. It's a real kind of like grueling, grinding sort of schedule. The sort of job where, you got to be there, bright and early in the morning till, the wee hours of the night, so kind of in the midst of all of that, my wife and I got married. She was a nurse actually at Woodhull Hospital in East Williamsburg, Bushwick, Brooklyn, and working in trauma. And we basically just never saw each other anymore. So we're kind of like, newlyweds, not seeing each other, just kind of like, just a little bit of passing, that sort of thing. So we decided that, we had to do something different. So, I started looking for something where I could use kind of like my culinary background, my management, restaurant management background, and kind of bring a lot of those skills to it. I saw Farm.One, and it kind of just clicked to me with my love of gardening. Of course, I didn't know anything about hydroponics really, but I knew how to grow plants outdoors, and I knew a bit about kind of operations and management and that sort of thing. So it clicked with me, definitely.
So coming into it, not knowing anything about hydroponics, what was that learning curve like? I mean, how badly did you fuck up the first week?
Well, there's opportunity for mistakes, definitely. But I think, when I joined Farm.One, we had a really great crew, and there were a lot of folks around. Of course, Rob was there, and we had a lot of other folks who were really great with kind of showing me the ropes and helping me learn the systems. There's a lot of overlap between growing outdoors and growing indoors, and then there's a lot that's very, very different. For instance, growing outdoors, man, if you talk to any person who's been gardening for a long period of time, they'll tell you the most important thing is the soil, and they'll talk about how they've built their soil over the course of many years, and how many worms they have in their soil and what color it is, and they just love taking handfuls and smelling it and that sort of thing. Here in hydroponics, obviously, water is replacing the soil. It's equally important, but it's a very different beast to manage. So just like with soil, we take care of the microbial life, the bacterial life that's in the water that's helping the plants uptake nutrients, but you have to do it in a very, very different way. You're also dealing with the LEDs, which are very different from the sun, and there are a lot of other factors where you have this kind of like long sloping curve to really learning what you're doing here. But there's a little bit of overlap.
I think the other thing as well that, just in terms of career advice and people wanting to get into the industry and things like that, one of the things that, certainly I think has served you really well is coming from the restaurant industry. You've kind of seen it all in a way. Like, you've worked with big teams, you've worked in buildings with equipment that fails, and just people calling in sick, and not having the materials you needed to do your shift and all that kind of stuff. You've kind of seen it, and so I never really hear from you like the panic that other people certainly would experience in that role. And so I think that when it comes to like hydroponics, indoor farming, all that kind of stuff, a lot of people get attracted to it because of the technology, or they get attracted to it maybe for other reasons. But the people who I think perform really well are people like you, who have, this constant kind of like preparedness, like it's going to be okay. I've seen this before. All right, someone's turned up late, or someone didn't turn up at all. We're still going to get the harvest done. We're still going to get planting done. If it doesn't happen exactly today, it's going to happen tomorrow, and it's going to be reliable, and that kind of thing. And that dependent, like, we all depend on you as a team. And I think like what you do in an outstanding way is you never let us down. It's just like, okay, You never let us down, and also you never panic. You never call us up and go like, "Oh my God, I can't do it today. Like I can't handle it." You're always like, oh, "Okay, well it's a bit tough, but we're going to get it done." And I think that's an amazing quality, and I think that it's something that if people are looking to start a career in this industry, it's a quality it's great to develop. Because any company that has a farm like this, they need that kind of quality in their team.
Yeah, well, I really appreciate you saying that. I owe that to the years working in the restaurant industry, especially as a server. Forget working as a sommelier. That's a little bit more of a glorified sort of position. You go back to waiting tables during New York City Restaurant Week, and you have way too many covers coming through the door, and it's going to be it's kind of going to be awful tonight, but it's like you got to make it work. So I think that's something that is a good attitude to have, coming through the door. These plants are really gorgeous right now, but they will humble you. They will die. There will be bugs that come in. The lights will fail. The building will have all sorts of issues with it that are out of your control. And you kind of just have to roll with the punches a little bit. So I've been very fortunate to work with a lot of other really great folks here, from management team to farmhands to the interns that we've had on the farm. So we've had a lot of really great, interesting and dedicated folks who have done a lot of really great work with us, and I wouldn't be able to do it without them. So yeah.
Justin, I'm curious, so pre-COVID, the production model on the farm was very different, right? It was grow to order. We were supplying chefs 100% of the time. And that, can you talk a little bit about what that model was like? What made that so challenging in some ways, but also kind of what made Farm.One really great at it?
Yeah, well, it was a really unique, but also a really challenging model. I mean, kind of the main difference between then and now is then with the grow to order, what I'm doing on a daily basis, what I'm planting, what I'm trying to do is really dictated by the customer. A chef will have an idea that, they want to do a Korean shiso leaf that is exactly this size and exactly this color, and they need 16 ounces of it twice per week, and you just kind of have to figure out how you can pull that off. So it's a really challenging model to work with, a really fun model, because they usually want to do some really interesting and cool and off the beaten path crops. But it's really the customer who's dictating what you're doing and what you're growing. With a model that's like what we're doing now, it's a little bit more like we're perfecting the kind of the crops that work best for us, and we're really kind of getting better at consistency and that sort of thing. So it's less about kind of like changing constantly and that sort of thing. It's more about consistency. But it's a really fun thing to do, to work with chefs. They've got a lot of creative ideas, and they've got amazing palates. So they're demanding customers, but that's kind of a part of the appeal.
Yeah, and just in case people are curious, our plan is to go back to that in addition to what we're already doing now. So the subscriptions for consumers is going great, and people really love that. But there will be a need as restaurants come back online, and as more independent fine dining restaurants, etc., in New York City come back online. We do plan to offer chef sales again as well. We certainly still get inquiries right now, right, from people who want to order for their restaurants. It's just not predictable enough for us, and it's not a big enough market for us as we speak. We're all hoping, I think, that everything gradually returns to, as it was or better over the next 9 months or so. But, we're really waiting, I think, for the world to go back to normal a little bit, and for restaurants to be able to have like a predictable dining offering that they can offer throughout the year. I don't know if you have a perspective right now on, what might happen to the restaurant industry over the next 6 to 9 months, and I mean, nobody knows
Yeah.
for sure, but everyone knows it's tough, right?
Yeah, it's really difficult. I don't know that I could really guess as to what's going to happen, but I think you're going to see uh, there's you can see with the restaurants that are open currently in New York City and doing outdoor dining and now a little bit of indoor dining that they're getting the customers. People really want to go out. People want to eat out. People want to have the experience, that New York dining experience again. So I don't think that that's going to go away. So I don't think fine dining is done in New York City. I think the people still want it. So it's just a matter of time. I think a lot of there are going to be some chefs who move outside of New York City, but we're going to see a lot of the same faces when restaurants start to come back. Restaurants will close, but you'll see a lot of the same chefs, executive chefs, opening up new places. So that's very exciting. I'll be excited to see if the really highest end fine dining 11 Madison Park and per se comes back in the same way, or if it's more kind of that David Chang Momofuku sort of vibe of slightly lower price point, a little bit more kind of accessible.
My take is people are desperate for an amazing experience.
Yeah.
Like the idea of sitting down and having even like a 3-course meal sounds amazing, but a multi-course meal with amazing wine and the idea of just chatting to the server and that just seems like a dream, I think, for a lot of people right now. So I'm convinced that things are going to come back and bigger and better. But I also think that so many restaurants and chefs have experimented with delivery as well. And so I think a lot of restaurants are going to retain that as part of their offering. I don't know. I'm really excited about what it's going to be like in a couple of years' time. I think it could be awesome.
Yeah, I think it's going to be great. I think it'll be a little bit different, but I'm excited to get back out there dining.
So kind
How
of,
we doing on time, Ina? Oh, sorry. Ina's got to be checking the time and all that kind of
We
stuff.
have 4 more minutes.
Oh,
4 more
okay.
minutes. Oh, I
4
have
more
like
minutes.
18 more questions. I guess we should skip a few of them. Well, Justin, one of the, I talk to a lot of people that want to get into farming. They come to Farm.One for either advice or to work with us to design and build their farm and all that. What's your advice to someone who's coming into this?
Yeah. Farming in general is kind of a multifaceted sort of thing. It's not like accounting where you study one specific thing. You have to know about a broad range of topics. So here with vertical farming, of course, we have plant health, plant pathology. You also have a lot of plumbing involved. I can hear the flood cycles running right now. So we're reminded of that. You also have electrical and you have all sorts of HVAC and that sort of thing. Coming into this industry with a lot of background in one or the other is really going to help you out. But it's not the only thing that you need to pay attention to. You have to be really eager to learn kind of every aspect of the industry and vertical farming. And really be in it for, really love making mistakes and learning from mistakes. I think, as I said before, these plants are humbling. So you really have to, be the type of person who can kind of roll with the punches a little bit.
What was the biggest plant mishap that has ever happened?
The biggest plant mishap.
We've got such a great operation here. We've never had a mishap. Right?
No, I can't think of a single one. We did have, we used to grow quite a lot of Pluto basil on the farm and supplied several pizza restaurants that they would, kind of garnish with a nice little crown of Pluto basil in the center. So we were doing a lot of it. A lot of these racks were filled with Pluto basil. And we have another grow room downstairs, and actually, at one point, all of the Pluto basil turned yellow. So we weren't able to harvest from it, and it was something that we really had to scramble to figure out to get to the bottom of. And so you basically have to go through a checklist where you say, okay, what could be causing this? Could it be that the pH of the water is off? Could it be that there's a nutrient imbalance? Could it be a fungal issue? Actually what it turned out to be was a water oxygen level, dissolved oxygen issue, where we increased the amount of dissolved oxygen that was in the water, and the plants started to come back and have that nice kind of like really dark green, beautiful sort of color. So, these little issues pop up here and there, and oftentimes the answer isn't very obvious. What you should do isn't very obvious. The plants can't speak, so it takes a little bit of investigation.
I'd also say that, when we've had a couple of disasters like that, we do tend to like reach out to like other farms or other people and just see, can we supply that? In my experience, everyone's super helpful, but often unable to do anything about it. We actually just had some people reach out a week ago who were looking for like 120 pounds of microgreens on a specific day. Great folks, but we just weren't able to do it because like we just don't have the capacity. But it definitely happens to the best of us, for sure.
So Justin, we're going to ask you what your rose, thorn, and bud is. So what we're going to do is we're going to ask each of our guests, what is one thing that they really love? That's their rose. What is one thing that is just a pain in their butt? That's their thorn. And then their bud is something that they're excited or looking forward to. So Justin, what is your rose, thorn, and bud?
Now, well, I'll have to say my rose is my wife, definitely.
Aww.
She's been with me for such a long time, and I couldn't have done any of this without her. So thorn, I would say because I'm sitting next to these marigolds right now, I would say thorn is spider mites, which are so difficult to get rid of. And bud, I got to go with the 2021 baseball season, which is going to be a really great season for the New York Mets.
Okay. All right.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for answering these questions, Justin. It was great to learn more about your story and to hear your perspective. Each week, we're going to be featuring a different guest in our podcast and asking them questions, our urban ag heroes. So before you sign off, be sure to like and subscribe to the Farm.One podcast. And check out the links in the description if you want to read a little bit more. And we can't wait to see you all next week. Thanks.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Bye.